Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming to join us today.
Oh, welcome. Got lots of people coming in. So happy to have you all here. Okay, we might get started. Welcome everyone. And I would like to start today with an acknowledgement of the traditional owners of the land. We are a team living and working on the lands of the Wurundjeri and Boon Wurrung peoples of the Kulin Nation, and for myself on the lands of the Ngunnawal people. We acknowledge their ownership of the land and repay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging leaders. We also acknowledge the rich tradition of oral storytelling by First Peoples, which has allowed for the transfer of knowledge from one generation to the next for millennia. Finally, if you know the traditional custodians of the lands that you are joining us from today, we invite you to acknowledge these custodians in the chat. Next, we have some housekeeping. We invite you to add any questions via the Q&A function throughout the presentation, and we'll use these at the end. We won't be able to get through them all. However, we'll collect together any outstanding questions and burning questions that a few people might be asking. Please use the chat window as a space to introduce yourself, share thoughts and comments, and have discussions with our community of participants here. We'll be keeping an eye out for questions and comments and requests for help in both the windows, as well as if anyone has any requests for help, just put your hand up and we'll offer you some technical assistance. You can also call Portable. Our number is on our website. I would also like to let you know that this session will be recorded. So if for any reason you do not get to see the full webinar, or you'd like to share it with one of your colleagues or friends, it will be available on our website in the next couple of days. So before we launch into the presentations today, I'd love to share a little bit about us. Welcome. If this is your first event with us, Portable has been around for about 15 years, and we are a purpose-driven digital design agency. Our mission is to address social need and policy gaps in the community by using human-centered design and technology. We put together our event today with the goal to support up-and-coming people trying to enter the tech industry. And that's just a quick overview of what we'll be covering. Joining us today, we have a wonderful lineup of Portable staff. These people are ready to share their knowledge and experiences with you. From our people and culture team, we have Hayley Hewitt, our people experience manager, and Emma Evans, our people and culture advisor. From our technology team, we have Rick Measham, a lead developer, Chris, a head of technology, Lincoln, senior developer, Jamit, another one of our developers, Ellie, another developer here, and finally myself. I'm also a developer here at Portable, and I will be your host for today's webinar. So without further ado, we'll move on to our first presentation with our wonderful Hayley and Emma, who are going to be presenting on making a great first impression.
Thank you so much, Deb. Firstly, I guess I just want to call out I might be a little bit slow with kind of toggling between the screens because I'll be talking and changing. So we'll kind of see how that goes whilst reading my little notes. But I just want to say making a good first impression is really important when applying for roles and interviewing. I guess during this next couple of minutes, I'm going to be covering what recruiters and organisations look for, what to include in your resume or CV, and the importance of a cover letter. And then Emma will be focusing on the importance of LinkedIn, as well as what to include on your LinkedIn. So when recruiters and organisations are looking at candidate applications, we're focusing on a couple of things. Firstly, who are you? Like, who is the candidate as a person? What are their skills and experience to in relation to the role that they're applying for? This can include also previous experience in other industries and roles. And finally, we look to see if the candidate is motivated for the role. This last piece is really important to us here at Portable, as all of our team members have motivation and passion for the roles and also the projects that they're working on. And with that, it's really important to remember that the overall intention of your resume and cover letter is to get you interviewed. And what's one of the best things that gets you interviewed? Showing enthusiasm and interest in the role that you're applying for. Obviously, having, showing off the skills that you do have as well is very important. And here is what to include on your resume. So when you're getting ready to apply, it's important to tailor your resume to the role that you're applying for. You can do this by paying attention to the language used in the job ad, ensuring this language carries through your application. You can also call out key skills that the application is looking for by including them in your current and previous experience. Of course, only use these skills and experience if you've actually done the thing. If you're applying for your first professional job, it's okay to have a smaller resume. You're not expected to have years of experience. If you've had previous jobs, like in retail or hospitality, make sure that you include these, as it signals to the recruiters that you've, worked with others, but also that you maybe have time management skills and have also taken action from other people. That's really important to us. I'd also suggest that you include any education that you have undertaken. But unless specifically asked, there's no need to include your ATAR or transcripts. But though, if you are asked for those things, feel free to include them. Another thing that you don't need to include that you think you might need to is references. There is no need to have the references' names and contact details in your resumes unless otherwise stated. And also normally when people are checking references, which I know this is something that we do at Portable, we ask the candidates who we'd specifically like to speak with, which is normally current and most recent managers. And it's another thing that you don't need to include that maybe you think you do, but you don't need to include your date of birth. We don't need to have that kind of information in the resume at all. And then this is, I guess the importance of cover letters. Now onto cover letters. Writing a personalized cover letter is crucial when applying for a role. The cover letter is a great opportunity for you to speak to your motivation and interest in the role, as well as how this role fits into your career. This is also an opportunity for you to call out any research that you've done on the company, as this signals motivation and interest in the role and company. When writing a cover letter, make sure you've read the job ad and are meeting all the application requirements. We often have questions that we'd like answered in the cover letter, so it's really good to look for these things. And here's a bit more to put in your cover letter. Also, like the resume, make sure that you have read the job ad and understand the role that you're applying for. Try and pull through similar language and skill sets from the job ad, also through the cover letter. Again, this signals that you're aware of the job you're applying for. And it's also okay to call out any learning opportunities. If there are parts of the roles that you haven't experienced yet, call them out and talk about why you're enthusiastic to learn about these. And finally, make sure that your cover letter is personal and adapted to the role and company you're applying for. You can use similar templates for most jobs, but make sure the content changes so that it's specific to what you're applying for. And now over to Emma. Emma, you're on mute. What is a meeting without being on mute?
There's always one, isn't there? So our LinkedIn page is really an extension of our resume and is another resource that recruiters use to gain more insights about who you are as a person. What we understand, so when we understand the role that LinkedIn page when it comes to finding a job, we can start to use this page much more effectively. So how can we maximize our LinkedIn page while we're looking for a role? And how is our LinkedIn page different from our Facebook page? So let's take a look at the differences between the two social platforms. So Facebook was launched around 2004 and is predominantly used as an interpersonal social network tool. While LinkedIn is used in a similar way, there are some subtle differences in the way that we use both pages. So in comparison, Facebook is used in a more informal way of keeping in touch with family and friends. So the use of sort of sharing our social activities, fun photos, liking posts, and making new friends is done in a very casual and social way. It's important to note, though, that some recruiters do search for Facebook pages to gain more insights of potential candidates. So while Facebook is presenting you in your personal time and activities, it's important to be mindful of what you've posted. So a cardinal rule of thumb here is really to ask yourself, so would I be happy for a potential employer to see what I've just posted? When it comes to LinkedIn, the activities that take place on this platform are very similar. So we write it, our own posts, and we share things, things that we're interested in and what's important to us. We repost things that we see and like. We comment on other people's posts, and we reach out and connect in with other people. But the differences here is that our activities are centered around our professional opinions and experiences. From a recruiter's perspective, what they're looking for in your LinkedIn page is really to gain some insights from some of the articles that you've shared, what you are posting or what you've liked about other people's posts and your thoughts and reflections about these. Other good insights that recruiters might look for as well from your profile is what people, companies, or groups are you following? All of these pieces of information help to tell a story. It makes, it's a story of what makes you different to the next person, what makes you unique. And this is really the point, right? So when a recruiter is looking at, say, 20, 50, or perhaps 100 different candidates, a large part of applying for a role is really around thinking what makes you different, what makes you stand out in comparison to everyone else. So Hayley sort of talked about the importance of a cover letter. And I've mentioned earlier that LinkedIn profile is an extension of your resume, but also consider recruiters that use only LinkedIn to search for talent instead of advertising. How can we maximize our page to also suit those types of recruitment activities? So the first thing is to ensure that you've completed your profile and have a portrait photo of yourself. So your photo is really important as it needs to represent you as a professional. So if you're unsure of what type of photo to use, a really good idea is to search through through LinkedIn and see what other people have used. And a really good tip here is, to take a look at perhaps, some of the companies or industries that you're interested in working in, and that'll give you a really good idea of how other people have presented themselves. The LinkedIn section about you is also really important, as it's another great opportunity to share what makes you different in comparison to the next person. So if you don't have much, say, experience in tech, that's okay. Share your interests, your aspirations, what motivates you and what skills you have that are transferable. Another tip here is when recruiters are searching for new talent, they usually use keywords in their search. So for example, if a tech position, they may use keywords such as coding or web application, JavaScript or stack developer. You can use these keywords in your about section, which will help the recruiter connect into your profile and help to get you noticed even further in their search. So lastly, consider approaching a person that you've worked with previously and ask if they'd be interested in writing a recommendation on your profile. So recommendations work very similar to references and will give a potential employer an opportunity to get a little bit more of an understanding of your ways of working and how you could potentially be as their new employee. Also look at offering recommendations. This will also about your communication skills and your ability to show empathy and reflective practices when collaborating and working with others. So I hope that this has, what I've shared has been helpful. And remember to keep your LinkedIn profile up to date, because you never know who might be, who might find you in their next search.
Thank you so much, Hayley and Emma. Those were wonderful tips about making a great first impression, and I wish that I had those when I was applying for my first job. So next up, we have Rick, and he's going to be presenting on interviewing and feeling like a winner. Over to you, Rick.
Thanks everyone for being here this evening. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to quickly jump into the juicy stuff. There's a million articles on the web on how to interview, and they'll tell you how important it is to know the company you're talking to and how to craft some really good questions you can ask the interviewer. But today, I'm going to focus on just a few things that you can start working on right now. The first of those is the importance of storytelling. In an interview, we want to create empathy, and as humans, we relate to stories more than we relate to facts. So we'll talk about some storytelling. Then I'm going to tell you about how pretending Wonder Woman can make all the difference. That's going to be a bit of fun. And then finally, I'll talk to you about how to finish and follow up. And just a warning at the end, I'm going to ask you to do something brave, something that may make you feel a little uncomfortable, a little silly, especially if you're in a living room and the kids or your brothers and sisters are around. But I want you to try something with me. Let's get into it. Once you've been to enough interviews, you'll start to notice a pattern. You'll hear a lot of questions that begin with, tell me about a time, or give me an example. This technique's known as behavioral interviewing. The theory goes that past performance is an indicator of future behavior. What you've done before, you can and you will do again. Opportunity to create empathy and to connect with your interviewer, and you should prepare for them. But I get that you're thinking, how can I prepare something ahead of time when there's no way to know what questions are going to get asked? Well, step in a little close and I'll tell you a secret. You'll only need about half a dozen stories to cover dozens of different questions. In a typical interview, you'll only be asked a few of these questions, and it's okay to refer back to a previous story if you don't have another example handy and just expand on it to answer the second question. Let me walk you through a few typical things that interviewers are looking for when they ask these questions. And after that, I'll tell you how to craft a compelling story out of pretty much anything. The first of these is leadership. And this question might not mention leadership, but ask about how you interacted with teams or peers. And at this stage in your career, it doesn't matter if the only group you ever led was the church a cappella choir. You don't need to find stories that are about workplaces or uni projects. What interviewers are looking for when they're asking these questions, though, is examples of how you encourage, motivate, help, how you work with other people. So if you weren't officially the leader, you can still talk about how you led through encouragement and motivation if you were a part of a team. The second one is time management. Think about experiences that you've had where you've had to juggle multiple priorities. Your story should talk about how you prioritize tasks. Look, don't talk about how you left your uni assignments to the last minute and crammed it in all night. That's not a good story. Find stories where you've managed to do a good job of prioritizing tasks. The third one is adaptability. Interviewers are looking for your ability to act under pressure or handle a challenging situation. Talk about what you did to reduce the pressure or to overcome the challenge. And sometimes it's okay to include a story where things didn't work out so well. But if you do that, only do it once, and always finish by telling the interviewer what you did learn from that failure. The fourth one, communication. Communication is key in the workplace. And so interviewers want to know that you've got empathy and you can communicate with other people right across the business. So think of a time when you've had to have a difficult conversation with someone. How did you handle it? And what was the result? Once again, don't tell us about a fight with your partner. Think about a time where a difficult conversation has led to a positive outcome. Now, once you've brainstormed some examples, you can probably see how you can use a story about leadership to also talk about communication. And that's what I call the hack. Write the stories out and practice telling them. Tell them in a different way for each different kind of question. Find a friend or a family member and actually practice telling your stories. The more you practice, the better you'll get at it. So how do you construct a compelling story? Now, here's an easy framework. It's from Ken Adams, and he calls it the story spine. And it looks like this. Once upon a time, every day, but one day, because of that, until finally, and ever since then, and the moral is, And so by using this step here, you can construct a story that will engage the other person. Here's an example. A few years back, I was part of a knitting group and we were collaborating on a tapestry for a local charity. One week, 2 members of the group got into a heated argument and they stormed out. This meant we wouldn't have the tapestry done in time for the charity event. So I gave them time to cool down and I phoned them later that evening to talk to them, talk through their issues and to ask them to come back. Now, one of them agreed to come back, but sadly the other wouldn't. So I asked the group to work together to complete that last square to meet the deadline. And together we got it finished and the charity event was a big success. Now have a think about that story and think about, is this a leadership story, a time management story, or an adaptability story? Or is it all three? Using the stories that you write down, you'll be able to find that you can adapt them to each of the different things that you're being asked. Practice your stories, work them into themes, and work out how you can use your experience to answer these questions. All right, next bit. What has Wonder Woman got to do with interviewing? One of the hardest things to do in an interview is to convey confidence, especially when you're just starting out. Back in 2012, Amy Cuddy spoke at TED Global about a concept that she called power posing. She talked about how body language isn't just something that you can read, but it's something you can use to impact your own emotional state. The quote there, our bodies change our minds change our behavior, and our behavior changes our outcomes. That's right, you can affect your own outcomes by the use of body language. So during the interview, especially when you're on Zoom, sit at the front of your chair, don't lounge back, speak with energy and let your excitement show when you're talking about something. But here's the Wonder Woman trick. And in case you're wondering, I do this before important meetings, and I did it this afternoon before we came in here. In fact, most of the group here did it as well. All you got to do is stand up like Wonder Woman. Your feet have got to be shoulder width apart, your hands on your hips, pull your shoulders back and make your face strong. Hold that pose for at least 30 seconds and tell yourself, I've got this, I can do this, I'm ready, and I want this. As you do this, you will physically feel your mind rearranging itself to match your physical stance. You'll feel your confidence rising. And remember that feeling. And during the interview, if you need to, you can pause a second and just recall that feeling of confidence. Now, if you haven't already guessed, in a minute, I'm going to ask you to be brave and give this a go. I want you to experience the feeling this afternoon so that next time you've got an interview coming up, you know it works and you can give it a go then too. Not going to do it right now, we'll do it in just a minute. So finally, how to finish and follow up. There's a really famous moment in the film Glengarry Glen Ross where Alec Baldwin slams the blackboard and he writes the letters A, B, C down the board. Always be closing. He's talking to salespeople and telling them to never let an opportunity go by to ask for the sale. And you can do the same in your interview. And it takes confidence. It takes Wonder Woman confidence. But in your interview, you can ask for the job. So reiterate key points and ask for the job. So at the end of the job, you might say something like, thank you for your time today. As I've said, I'm a fast and keen learner. I communicate well, and I think we would work really well together. Will you hire me? I know it sounds really crazy to ask for the job right there in the interview, but you can do it. Then shortly after the interview, send a thank you note to whoever it was that you've already emailed. Reiterate those key points. And again, ask for the job. All right, let's go. If you're not on camera, or even people that are on camera here on the panel, what we're going to do, jump on your feet and let's do something brave. I want you to experience that feeling I was telling you about. I want you to have the confidence to ask for the job. So feet shoulder width apart, put your hands on your hips, pull your shoulders back, strong face, and say to yourself, I've got this, I can do this, I'm ready, and I want this. Can you feel it? I'm sure you can. Don't fake it until you make it. Fake it until you become it. Good luck, everyone. Thanks very much for your time.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rick. And I'm feeling like an absolute superhero. Next up, we have our amazing Chris, who's going to be talking to us about the code test and pair programming. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Deb, and thanks, Rick, for that lead in with the Wonder Woman pose. That has prepped me perfectly for for my part of the presentation today. So thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Chris. I'm head of technology at Portable, and I'd like to mostly talk about the code test today, which is a very interesting part of any interviewing process, and something that you'll all need to experience probably at least once in your career as you go for a tech job, or any kind of technical skill application. And I'd also like to touch a little bit about pair programming as a result of this, because it's something, as you'll see, that we incorporate into part of our code test. And just before moving on to the next slide, I'd like to thank the team for prepping for this event today. A lot of work has gone on behind the scenes, so thank you everyone on the panel. So, the code test. This is something that a lot of people dread when it comes to their first tech job, programming job. It is the thing that freaks people out the most, and it's important to talk about a little bit of why that is the case, and also why that is, and what we can do to help mitigate against that and prepare for it effectively. There's a whole range of materials and styles of code tests, some that we believe at Portable to be appropriate for a particular role, and some that may be completely inappropriate. So, you know, if you're going for a programming job and maybe you're working with embedded hardware, they might be giving you a code test on how do you log into some project management tool, or how do you work with, say, a web development framework, when that's not the use case or the thing that you'll be doing on day to day. So in terms of what to expect, the short answer will be it will depend on the role, and it will depend on the type of job that you're applying for. But we can give an example of Portable's code tests, and specifically in the web development space, and why we do things the way that we do. So it's really important to call out that the code test is an opportunity to understand you and your working style, right? It's less about, or at least the whole thing is not about the code and the end result that you produce. This can be somewhat surprising for especially people going into their first jobs, junior roles. Even if you are seeking to make a jump from, say, like a junior role to a mid-level role or a senior role, as you progress through that, we tend to place a lot of emphasis on those really critical technical skills, and less focus on ways of working and some of the other soft skills. But we believe that the code test is a really important part of the interview to understand how you work, process information, make your decisions, communicate, and the most important question behind all of these things is why. Why do you do things the way that you do them, and being able to communicate that to somebody. So for Portable's code test, which I'll actually link into the chat so that you can all jump onto GitHub and have a quick look around. It's a starter repo that allows people to create and use application, where you can search for a number of different articles. And the important thing about this particular code test is that it gives people and candidates flexibility on approaching the problem the way that they best see fit. It's really important to open up and understand what someone's working style is without shoehorning them into a particular corner because of an implementation detail, for example. So a couple of things to point out in relation to our code test. We have multiple starter branches. So You'll see in the repo, there's like a Next.js starter branch and a few other frameworks at the moment that allow people to get started straight away. It's really important. We want you to succeed at the code test, right? And getting rid of boilerplate and some of the base level things to get started is a really important step in order to get you moving on the challenge itself. These two following points are probably the thing that still surprises me the most when we have candidates come through our own pipeline for roles, which is that we hear stories about code tests that are 8 hours long or full days, or I took this thing away and they made me work on it for a week only to find out that I didn't get the job after a week's worth of unpaid work. We think people can do better. We think organizations can do better. And our method here in the way that we evaluate people is that we want you to get familiar with the test, the code, what your plan of attack will be within an hour. And then the second part is that you spend another hour with a member of the portable technology team working through the solution so that we can understand how you've planned your work, decisions that you're making, and obviously the quality of the work as well as we go through it, but with context, your context. So, things to focus on in code tests. Being able to use your tools effectively. So these things, when you're working on your own, make sure that you've got these areas under control. You want to be able to get around your code editor, know how to make commits, for example, if you're working on a project with source control, know how to get around your debugger for quickly evaluating issues and being able to report back and work through problems quickly. Efficiency in your tools is going to help you work through the problem faster, but also demonstrate to your potential employer that you value your tool sets and you look after them and you invest in them to become efficient and effective. The next point, understand the brief. So with this particular challenge, there's a number of ways that you could implement a very simple news search application. Am I going to, or how is the UI going to look? What kind of considerations should I give to loading and caching results? What libraries am I going to use in the implementation? All of these questions and more apply to the many, many branches of choices that you could take. And it's important to understand what all of those are before you come into your pairing session or the interview part of a work test or any coding challenge. And the last one that's the most important here is to choose a direction. So at the end of your hour and before you walk into your interview, make conscious notes of the trade-offs that you've made and the direction that you want to take. Without a doubt, the person doing the interviewing will ask you, why did you decide to do this? And if it was just some kind of intuition or feeling, all of that's fine, but I'd encourage you all to interrogate that feeling and explain why you felt that way and what was driving you to make that choice. Is it some stylistic reason? Is it because you prefer fundamentals over like the hot new, JavaScript library? All of these things are really important to communicate clearly. And then when working with the team or the people in your code test, talking out loud, being able to explain your thinking, even when something doesn't go to plan. So if you're not sure of why or how something works, calling that out is really important. It's going to demonstrate to your employer that you understand where the limits of your knowledge are and where you want to grow. It's really important. Take your time. Don't rush. If you need some time and you prefer to spend time working through problems in the moment, explain that. Say, look, I'm not quite sure what to do immediately, but can we spend 3 or 5 minutes just talking out loud and trying to solve this? Or can you give me like 2 minutes of silence just while I try and plan something out, and then we'll work through it straight after that. And the last one, which the best interviews that I've been in have been, or code tests that I've been in, have been the ones where candidates are asking the interviewer what they'd like them to help with. And that's a really important thing. We're here to support you. We want to hire you. The roles are open, especially for the first tech jobs, and bringing more people into the industry. It's a really important part of what we're trying to do more broadly at Portable, but also as an industry. And we really want you to get the job. So ask us what we can do, and tell us what we can do for you in the course of the code test. I'm going to talk a little bit about pair programming at the moment. So why are we just going to touch on this very briefly? So I mentioned before that as part of our code test, we have a 1-hour pairing session with a team member from Portable. So whilst it's useful for the code test, this idea of pairing or working together with others, either in a pair or larger groups, will probably have similar or transferable skills to other interview types, such as whiteboarding or collaborative problem solving. So let's take a look at a definition of pair programming. And it's essentially where two people come together to write code. And it's a very collaborative way of working and involves lots of communication. Noting that I've highlighted a lot of communication and not the two people write code together as the most important part of pair programming, which is really interesting and something that people miss quite a bit. While a pair of developers are working on a task together, they also plan and discuss their work rather than just writing the code. And being able to clarify ideas and come up with different approaches in order to get better solutions is what this is all about. And I really wanted to highlight, just as part of this, that it can be really difficult when you're trying to land your first job. Again, it's the focus on technical skills and technical competencies that you might be thinking about a lot. And often that isn't the biggest indicator of success, especially if you're just starting out in a new field or a new area. Being able to work with people and learn together is more important. There are other things that are not pair programming, and they're worth calling out just as a highlight. So mentoring, teaching, coaching, just to name a few. And just at Portable, when we talk about pairing and when we say on our Slack channels, hey, we've got some, I'm available for pairing, we're talking about all of these things. And it's important, certainly in an agency context, with lots of project team variables, that everyone can switch to the most beneficial mode for the particular task, project, or client. So it might be the case that a senior and a junior are working on a project together. And actually what we need to do is spend a little bit of time doing some teaching about a new framework or technology that we're about to use on a project. Or perhaps, a mid-level developer is looking to grow into a senior role, and they want to learn a little bit more about how to guide others in their own approach when it comes to technical decision making. So that might be a coaching session with a lead, for example. So it's important that we cover off these points. And when thinking about your first role more generally, and why we're talking about this, try to aim for roles where you can see that there are opportunities for pairing and mentoring and coaching and teaching. This may take place as regular pairing events in a calendar somewhere, like team technical deep dives into technical and maybe non-technical topics too. And making sure to query your employer or potential employer about what are the opportunities to learn as a group and grow. And I'd like to finish off just by covering off some of the probably the biggest piece of advice that I can give anyone on a code test, and it's you won't and cannot know everything. It sounds very obvious, but imposter syndrome is something that gets spoken about a lot in the technology industry. We are a fast-moving industry, and we need to accept our surrounding context and that we work in a very fast-paced environment. There's always new code being written, new libraries, new software, security, different ways of structuring programs. Again, it's a new field, relatively speaking, compared to other industries that are out there, and the rate of change is immense. So it's really important to acknowledge that you can't know everything. And as a result, neither does everyone else. That's myself, everyone on the panel. We all had a bit of a chuckle about this slide when we were preparing for this presentation today. So it's really important to acknowledge that the person across from you in the interview and the person who might be trying to take you through a code test, almost certainly they may know more, but they won't know everything. And try not to make that assumption, because it can be really challenging to your state of mind when you're going into an interview. So be aware of this and use it to your advantage when applying for your first tech role. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Chris. These were some super helpful insights. Next up, we have our fabulous Hayley again. This time she's going to be diving into psychometric testing. Over to you, Hayley.
Thank you so much, Deb. Yeah, as Deb said, I'm going to be talking about psychometric, like personality assessments. So these assessments are these are assessments that look at elements of human behaviors that make up personalities, and they really aim to get a better understanding of why people behave the way that they do. This is slightly more complex than maybe BuzzFeed's Which Harry Potter House Are You would like to make you believe. So I'm going to do my best to try and talk slowly and go through the information. I know that in these presentations I'm known to talk quite quickly, so I'm so sorry. I really want to stress just from the very beginning that this is not the only tool that Portable uses when making a decision on hiring. We look at all information from interviews and applications when deciding who to hire. Personality assessments is just one part of that process and decision, and it's never the deciding factor. And I think that's just really important to kind of call out from the beginning. So how are assessments used at Portable? There are a range of psychometric and aptitude testing that recruiters use to get a better understanding of candidates and their fit for roles and companies that they're applying for. Here at Portable, we use a personality assessment called the Business Assessment Questionnaire, or the BAQ. As the name suggests, there is a focus on business behaviour and professional preferences. This is a Hudson tool, and Hudson is a very large global recruitment agency that also makes a couple of these tools, and they have a range of other tools as well. But this particular tool, the BAQ, assesses 25 different dimensions of personality to help predict how you will behave in the workplace. This assessment does not measure someone's ability to do the role. This is what our work sample or pair programming stage of our recruitment process that Chris just touched upon. That's really what that stage is for. So we use this assessment near the end of the recruitment to get a better understanding of our candidates, as well as confirm and question what we have seen throughout the interview process. And this also leads to questions in our senior leadership interview as well. By using this tool, we're collecting a bit more information on the candidates and are able to question any bias we might have. It also enables us to ensure that we have the right environment to support the new hire to be able to work and excel in. If there are preferences that we don't think aligns with the role, or if we have seen so far, we always give you a chance to talk about this. And that's also why it feeds questions into our senior leadership interview, that final interview, so that we can dive a little bit deeper and be able to, both talk about it rather than us kind of taking the profile away and being like, nope, it's all for us. So the particular assessment we use, the BAQ, takes about 20 minutes and is completed online. And after you've completed the assessment, the results are sent to Hudson and then sent on to Catherine Foster, the head of people and culture, and myself. Catherine and I are both trained and accredited in interpreting the results of the assessment, and we only have access to it, and all of the information is confidential. Yeah, and then kind of what happens from there. So Catherine and I, we debrief the senior leaders at Portable. So this means mainly the head of the discipline. In this case, it would be Chris that I'd be debriefing on your profile. And we talk about what we see in the profile with a focus on preferences for candidates and how the dimensions work together. We also look at the sort of preferences that we would expect for each role. After the interview process, candidates can be debriefed on the profile if this is something that they would like, and they can do this with myself or they can do this with the psychologist at Hudson. When debriefing successful and unsuccessful candidates, we don't share profiles with candidates. This is because there are a number of dimensions that have very commonly used words like extroversion, open mindfulness, and autonomy that don't share the same meaning in the assessment as they do in regular life. And sharing the profile with people who are not trained in reading it can lead to misunderstanding and harm, and that is really never our end goal. Also, with us undertaking personality assessments, we understand that they can be a little daunting. So when briefing someone in on them, there's always an opportunity for candidates to ask us any questions and kind of share maybe any nerves they're having about it as well. Yeah, that is personality assessments at Portable.
Thank you, Hayley. That was a very insightful explanation of personality assessments. Next up, we have, last but certainly not least, 3 of Portable's developers, all of whom joined the company within the last 7 months. They are going to share some of their experiences of getting hired. Over to you, Lincoln, Jimit, and Ellie.
Thanks, Deb. Hi, everyone. I'm Lincoln. Together with Jimit and Ellie, we will be sharing our experiences and background in the tech industry, landing our first tech job, our experience applying at Portable, and what advice we would give our past self. So let's jump straight into it. First up is introductions, background, and experience. I'll go first. So I studied a software engineering bachelor's degree at the University of Canberra, graduated in 2009. My first tech job was a graduate position at the Department of Defense. After that, I worked at various government departments, freelance and digital agencies in Melbourne, and now I work at Portable. I'll hand it off to Jimit to introduce himself.
Thanks, Lincoln. Hello, everyone. I'm Jimit. I'm a .NET developer at Portable, joined like 6-7 months ago. My background and experience. So I studied bachelor's in India and pursued my master's in information technology from Swinburne University. For my first tech job, I'll cover a couple of them. For my first job in India was an internship, and the first job in Australia is as a .NET developer in electronics company. My background, I'm a backend specialist, but aiming to focus more on the full stack development.
That's great. What kind of work did you do in your internship?
Well, at my internship, mostly it was working in an in-house project, but just in terms of learning, it was mostly pair programming, some basic C#, HTML, CSS, and yeah, simple SQL queries.
Awesome. And next we have Ellie.
Hi, I'm Ellie. I'm a junior developer here at Portable. My background and experience is I started a computer science degree at Swinburne in 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic. And then about in the middle of this year, about halfway through the course, I realized that I wanted to focus more on web development, which the degree really wasn't covering. So I put my head down and I focused on fast tracking my way into getting a job in the industry, which is what really meant the most to me. Following that, I managed to land my first job here at Portable. And yeah, I'm front-end focused, but I'm really excited to learn more about the back end.
Awesome. It's great to have you, Ellie. Next, we're talking about our first tech job. We'll be going through how did we land our first role and what was that experience like? And I'll hand it to Jimit.
Cool. So my first tech job was my final year project mentorship, turned into an internship, and then turned into my first tech job. Overall, the interview process was overwhelming, and it was split across like multiple interviews and exams. So for my internship, it was more of a textbook-based and theoretical questions, but for my actual job, it was more of a coding challenge. I'd also like to talk about my first job I landed in Australia. It was like a completely different situation because being an international student, there was a lot of pressure, and I'm sure all the international students attending this event can relate it. Yeah, it was like a fresh start as no professional coding for around like 2 years. And yeah, somehow I cracked it, and here I am.
Alrighty. And myself, I was selected as one of over 100 graduates in 2010 at the Department of Defense. There was about 500 people that applied that year. As part of the graduate program, we did 3 rotations. I worked in a development team coding in Java. I also worked as an analyst, and my permanent role was building rapid analytical tools for internal use. That was really fun. The process was spanning over several days. There was an aptitude test, essay writing, which I haven't done since college days. There was group activities, panel discussions, and a random topic speech, which was very nerve-wracking. Overall, it was very overwhelming. It was very competitive, but it was also fun and challenging. I particularly enjoyed the group exercises. I remember one question in the technical interview. It was, what is the difference between high-level and low-level programming languages and when to use them? I immediately panicked, and I couldn't remember what languages were what. And I ended up pausing for several minutes, and I searched my brain for that information, formulated an answer as best I could, and just delivered it. But I'm really glad I gave a long pause before I delivered, so that I could come across coherent. And next we have Ellie.
Yes, so my first role was right here at Portable. So let's jump on to the next slide. Applying at Portable. Why did we apply to Portable, and how did we prepare for that? So I was working with a recruiter who suggested that Portable would be a good fit for me. So I did some research to learn about Portable's purpose, and they really stood out as their values and goals aligned with mine. And the work that they did was making change in really meaningful areas. Before applying, I made sure that my resume, LinkedIn profile, and portfolio website were all perfect. So when anyone looked at them, they could easily tell who I was and what I could do. Yeah.
What did you include in your portfolio, Ellie?
Well, other than what I'd done in the online course, I didn't have any projects to showcase. So my plan of attack was to flesh out those projects that I had done in the course by adding extra features so I could properly show off my skills instead of just uploading anything that I'd done for the course.
That's a great idea. And me, before working at Portable, I was working as a tech lead in a small agency. I wanted to join a team of like-minded people working on meaningful projects, and I saw the job online and researching the company, looking at the staff. I found an old workmate that used to work there, so I reached out to her and had a chat with her about the culture and the work they do to see if I would fit in, if we would suit each other. After that, I just researched the job description and I correlated it to my own experiences and also lined up any questions I had to ask. And yeah, that's it. I'll hand it to Jimit.
Cool. So yeah, for me applying, I did apply at Portable because I always wanted to work in an agency culture who does work on impactful projects. And the other main reason was that I wanted to work as a full stack developer. I also did research a bit about the company because there was not many .NET opportunities advertised when I was applying. So just like, went through LinkedIn company website and seen some projects that the company has done. In terms of preparation, it was just like usual preparation and some basic interview questions. But yeah, I just like, made sure that I read through some of the tech that I really wanted to work in and haven't had much experience.
Great. Next, we'll talk about our experience applying at Portable. Jimit, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So applying at Portable was really a great experience for me. I really met some awesome people during the whole interview process. Though I felt the process was a bit thorough, but for me, like, it looks at overall experience, overall qualities rather than just like, coding and technical skills. And in terms of pair programming, I really enjoyed the pair programming, which I did with Chris, because I really had some great discussions during that session.
Awesome. And myself, overall, I really enjoyed applying at Portable. During the process, I felt like they were trying to get the best out of me. They were very encouraging and supportive, which isn't always the case at interviews, especially for coding tests. I really enjoyed the open-ended questions and activities. I think this allows for creative problem solving, and it creates more of a discussion than just a boxed answer. And also, I liked the time-boxed coding challenges, so you don't waste your whole weekend on coding challenges, as Chris pointed out. And yep, I found the pair program session very challenging. It was my first time pairing over Zoom, and yeah, it was very scary. Ellie, off to you.
Yeah, considering the broader tech industry, applying at Portable was a really wonderful experience. I never was left in the dark. Haley was always in touch, letting me know what was happening next or answering any of the questions I had. Everyone I met throughout the experience was really friendly, and I felt like I was being treated as an actual human being and not just another random applicant. I remember actually in my technical interview with Rick, we ended up talking about custom keyboards, which is the last thing you'd expect to be talking about in a job interview, but it made it, yeah, so much more meaningful.
Awesome. So we're going to wrap it up with some self-advice. We're talking about what advice we would give ourselves, our past self. Ellie, would you like to go first?
Yeah, for sure. As soon as you know HTML and CSS, set up a portfolio website and start applying to jobs. There's no pain in applying if you don't necessarily check all of the boxes. Just go ahead, do it, get started as soon as you can. Learn in public. As scary as it might sound, you should share what you're learning online, because then you can gain valuable insight from other people. And shift your focus from courses and tutorials to building projects. This will help you actually apply the concepts that you've learned, as well as forcing you to learn the things that you don't understand.
It's great advice, great self-advice. And if I could talk to my past self, I would say, hey, past self, read instructions carefully, ask to clarify any questions, even if it's slightly ambiguous, and this will help you sort of form your plan of attack. If there is limited amount of time, think about what you want to portray in your answer. Slow down to compile your thoughts. Don't be afraid to share your thinking. Also, follow what you're interested in, and if you don't know what you're interested in, spend some time to explore that. It would really help you along your career. And Jimit?
Yeah, there's quite a few actually. So based on my present and personal experience, I'd like to advise myself is like, be really patient during the whole interview processes wherever you apply, but don't just sit back. You need to follow up when needed. Do not hesitate to apply for a role which might need some like more experience than what you actually have. Yeah, pick a tech you want to work on and practice writing some professional level coding. Don't shy away in asking help or sharing your thoughts, and appear your coding exams with a really clear and fresh mind.
Awesome.
Thank you very much, Jimit, Lincoln, and Ellie. These were some really fantastic stories, and I know I always find that it's really helpful to hear about what it's really like going through these processes. So I'm sure everybody here really appreciates that you've shared these experiences today. Now we have some really good questions that have been coming through in our chat and our Q&A. So I'm going to start with one for Emma about what are your thoughts on including a photo on your resume?
Thanks, Deb. If you've got your LinkedIn profile as part of your resume, then we would recommend that a photo isn't actually necessary. I know, I mean, like, when I think back, not for me personally, but, 30 years ago, people used to always put their photos on their resumes. And I think nowadays it's really not that necessary. If you've got a really good photo in your LinkedIn page and recruiters are really interested in exploring a little bit more about who you are, then I'm sure that they will sort of go onto your LinkedIn page and they'll have a look at your photograph there.
Thank you, Emma. Our next question, I'm going to ask Chris about whether there is a code test equivalent for those people seeking UX or UI roles.
Yes. Tricky question in the sense that UX and UI roles are kind of two different distinctions that we have at Portable. So our project teams and structures are mostly focused on full stack development. And we're looking to grow developers who are excited to learn, multiple languages, frameworks, and be able to be flexible in terms of the projects that we're going to work on. But however, as we grow in the future, part of our strategy to work on long-term projects and products would be actually having more dedicated roles. So like UX, UI, or front-end specialists, if you like, where they are able to solely concentrate on that area of expertise. In terms of the test, that some of that is incorporated into the current test as you do it as part of the news app. You have to make decisions about, say, decisions about the layout, what type of styling libraries you're going to use, what design decisions you're going to make. That does come into play, but probably not to the degree that you would expect from, say, a front-end specific role. And it also is worth highlighting that UX or user experience isn't just limited to technology or development. It's very much a part of the design discipline that we have at Portable as well, which I can cover off probably in the next question, Deb.
Excellent. So the next question I'll also ask Chris. Does the code test apply to those applying for front-end design positions?
Indeed. So this is assuming that front-end / design positions are the same thing. And what I want to call out is that within the design discipline at Portable, we have an experienced design team, which incorporates many more areas apart from the technical aspects. So information architecture design, IA testing, UX audits, conceptual prototype testing, user flows, testing conversational design, content logic, accessibility audits. I could go on. Like, there's many aspects to user experience, and at Portable, our roles are very much the experience design team sits within the design discipline, and we have the full stack kind of developer front end, back end implementations inside of the technical discipline. That certainly will change over time, but this is working really well for us right now as an agency, dealing with not just one product or project, but multiple, and lots of different variability in the things that we tackle day to day. So to the answer to both of those questions, yes, there is a code test equivalent for those things, not as in depth as we would like it to be for a specific role there. but there are also code tests or equivalents, like work samples, if you like, for experience design, where they'll actually be tested on a number of those areas, specifically if experience design was a role that you'd like to look into as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Our next question, I'm going to direct to you, Hayley. At what stage of the interviewing and hiring process does the psychometric test come in?
Oh my God, I feel like I'm trying to count through our stages in our mind right now. I'm going to give the wrong number. So I'm just going to say just before senior leadership. So our stages are application review, initial interview, technical interview, work sample, then psychometric assessment, or like personality assessment, sorry, and then a senior leadership interview. So yeah, near the end. So not so many people have the assessment, so it's also less daunting in that. And yeah, it's also when we're pretty sure about you as well.
Thank you very much. And just to follow on from that question, I guess it's to do with psychometric tests, but also more broadly in the whole interview process. What kind of strategies does Portable use to mitigate unconscious bias in subjective assessments of candidates?
Yeah, of course. I love this question so much, to be honest. So we obviously all saw this question. We're like, we should really do that unconscious bias training again that we did about a year or so ago. We think that was very beneficial, but then also we ensure that no candidate ever goes through only ever meeting one person. So no one is ever I'm never reviewing everyone and then interviewing them and kind of continuing them through. So we can have many different people's opinions there, and also just thoughts. It's also, we encourage each other to call out our bias. We all have it. Let's acknowledge that and really question one another with that. And also something that I do if I ever kind of notice my obviously it's unconscious, so I want to say I notice it. Kind of popping up there, I then also ignore names and I ignore education, and I have a real focus on experience there a little bit as well. So there's not those kind of, I guess, triggers making me not want to progress with a candidate because of my unconscious bias.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have got a question I'm going to share it with Lincoln, Jimmy, and Ellie. About how important it was for you to go through and understand the company's background for the company that you were applying for. Maybe let's start with Lincoln. I'm very sorry, I should have one at a time to avoid confusion, and then we'll go Jimmy.
Yeah, for me personally, it's very important to research a company's background. Because the things I care about are culture, the work, meaningful projects. And so you won't know that unless you look into it. But for each person, it depends. I guess the research is important, so you know more and it can give you ammo so you can ask the right questions, or maybe it might save you time as well. If it's not a good fit, you can know right away. So yeah, I guess the answer is it depends.
Awesome. What about you, Jimmy?
Yeah, for me, it was important to go through the company background. As I have mentioned earlier, that when I applied for .NET developer, there weren't many roles advertised at Portable. So it was kind of like a new company for me. But yeah, I wanted to work in agency culture, and I have gone through LinkedIn profiles, company website, the projects the company has worked for. So yeah, it's really good for me, and that's the culture I wanted to go in. So it was really important for me to do the research on a company background.
Thanks. And what about you, Ellie?
Yeah, I think it's super duper important to look into understanding what the company is about, what they're trying to do, and also specifically what kind of work they are doing. Just to see, as Jimmy and Lincoln said, that you have the right fit, that it is stuff that you want to be doing. Like I said earlier, when I looked into Portable, I could tell that it was a place that was working on stuff that really meant a lot to me. And if, say, I looked into another agency and saw that, they were working on, say, projects with oil companies, I probably wouldn't want to apply there. So certain things like that, being able to understand beforehand instead of just applying blindly, knowing that can help filter out things that you might not even want to be applying for.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thanks, Ellie. So our next question, we're going to go back to you, Chris. And I have a question asking, if a company does not provide feedback from a coding challenge, how are applicants expected to learn from that experience?
Excellent question. So the quick answer to that is, well, they aren't expected to learn from that experience, and that's a really poor result, right? So it's really important to ask for feedback up front as part of your process, and or any interviewing process really. It doesn't have to be the code challenge. It could be any part of the recruitment process, and asking for feedback from your resume right through to the final interviews. I think it's really important that you are declarative with your interviewers, to say that I'm really looking to grow and develop, and I'm trying to improve. And the way that I can do that is by having, and receiving honest and valuable feedback, which I'm ready to hear. And letting people know that they can be open with you is also super important, because otherwise they might be a little guarded in their responses. But the degree to which they will be vulnerable or put forward their honesty is the degree to which you're willing to be vulnerable as a person as well. And that's really important. So I think it's important. I think if a company also, just as a side note, I think if a company is saying that they aren't able to provide you feedback for any of the stages, it probably speaks a little bit to what they value in people, and the way that they would be valuing feedback more generally inside of their organization. So I don't know, I tend to use that as a little bit of a canary in the mine kind of signal for something that's not quite right, but it's just something to think about as well, as a piece of additional information that you can use when making your assessments on which roles to apply for, which companies to apply with.
Thanks, Chris. Our next question, I'm wondering if maybe you have some thoughts on this one, Rick. We have a fresh uni graduate and a primary carer for a young daughter. How difficult do you think it might be to find a part-time junior developer position as a first job? And do you think it's possible or feasible that there are many opportunities, or are most of the opportunities full-time?
It's a question I wish I had a different answer for. I think in the industry there are far too many jobs that are insisting on being full-time, and that does make it difficult for primary caregivers or anyone else that's unable to attend full-time. On the flip side of that is we, to pat our own backs, are far more open to that than you'll find most people. We want awesome people to come and work with us, and we'll meet them where they are. So we will work with you to create that flexibility, and to find the right people to come and work with us. And we hope that the industry moves more and more towards that. There are other B Corps around who put people in front of the queue, and other kind of businesses who would be looking to do this. But I think it's something really important the industry needs to move to.
Thank you, Rick. For our next question, I have one for you, Hayley. How does Portable define a good cultural fit?
Yeah, so I guess we kind of define it a little bit differently than some companies, or we speak about it maybe in a bit of a different way. So the problem sometimes when people say, what is a culture fit, is that it can actually be really limiting, particularly for neurologically diverse people. It can be really about focusing about, I think it also really kind of leans into that tech bro kind of space where it's like, no, you have to be little micro copies of us, and that is not the case at Portable in the slightest. And when we think about how people fit within Portable, we think about if they're aligned to our values and behaviours. This can be a little bit trickier to kind of see from someone's resume and cover letter, but you can normally see if someone's actively against the values and behaviours. So that's sort of how we look at it, and what we look as like more values aligned, and we don't talk as culturally aligned. Yeah, just because it is incredibly limiting and not very diverse in thinking.
Thank you, Hayley. Our next question I'm going to direct to Chris. Is it expected for candidates to have had experience before applying for junior roles?
Oh, I love this question. So this one is a really interesting one because I think it's about the support structures of the team that you're going to be going into that really depends on whether or not candidates need the experience or not. Again, it's probably not about an individual, so it's not about it's not about you per se applying for the role. One of the considerations that we took into account recently when hiring for junior roles was about what is our current team structure set up to provide the best support for, and would we be doing a disservice if we brought on people or more juniors, for example, who hadn't had a role in the industry before? And I think this is a question around responsibility and being able to best provide the support for people in the teams, and especially because juniors and people applying for their first roles are expecting and deserve the support so that we can have more people in the industry being supported, developed, and growing as a result of them coming into the field. So I think it's a good question to pose to your potential employer and ask, are you prepared to support someone who is going into their first role, who hasn't had a job experience before? And knowing that up front, again, probably isn't a strong indication of where you're at, but more so about where that company is at and what they can facilitate at that point in time. Yeah, without a doubt, experience does help. However, again, patting ourselves on the back a little bit, we made intentional choices and will continue to support people coming into tech as their first role without prior experience, because it's something that we need to do and encourage.
Absolutely, that's something that we're encouraging. Thanks, Chris. Our next question, I'm going to go to Ellie first and then to Hayley. Should neurodiverse people and people with disabilities disclose this during the hiring process? And what do you think are the pros and cons of doing so?
Definitely. Well, I can actually speak from experience. During my interviews here at Portable, I was not necessarily disclosing it in a very formal way. I wasn't trying to say, oh yes, by the way, I have ADHD. No, it was more of just it came up in conversations, trying to bring that up kind of organically, because it is something that I felt, at least personally, I wanted to be able to share with people because it's an important thing for others to know. But that's leads into another thing, which is your personal level of comfort and whether that is something you want to talk about, which is, super important that you're not pushing yourself out of your comfort zone just because you want to be able to share certain things. But yeah, it is super helpful, at least for me, to be able to do that.
Yeah, look, I echo what Ali's saying. I think it's really important to be left up to the individual depending on how comfortable they are. This is something that us within People and Culture have spoken a lot about, and we ask once someone's been hired if they need, if we need to know anything and if they'd like us to know anything. And that is really just to kind of mitigate any unconscious bias that is there around that. So kind of like what I was speaking to earlier, that's one of the things that we do in that way, but also making sure that once they've been hired and the contract's been signed, that we have enough time to implement anything that we might need to implement as well. Like there might be changes at the way we work to make sure that this person can really thrive within Portable.
I have a question that follows on really well from that one, Hayley.
Give it to me, Deb. What is it?
A little similar, but what kinds of support does Portable offer neurodiverse people, people with disabilities, or people who may work in different ways to most people?
Yeah, oh my God, such a broad question. I'm not going to be able to cover everything. I'm so sorry. But I think it's about really having an open conversation. And being like, what do people need, and making it as, I guess, as comfortable as possible for the individual to ask for the things that they need. And one way that we do that is by having a people manager, by like, it's kind of like a mate. I would like to think that everyone thinks of their people manager as a friend, as someone that they can go to and talk about these things and really talk about the asks for it then to be advocated at the lead and senior leadership level within Portable. That is one way, but then also just adapting things, making sure that like Ali, who has ADHD, that we're then not doing things as a group and expecting her to do things when she can't. Like it's just adapting everyone else's working style around that a little bit more and understanding these things.
Thanks, Hayley. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this one as well, Chris, as a senior leader at Portable.
Yeah, so certainly from the tech team perspective, we've got a number of members in the team that who are going through a range of challenging, neurodiverse related issues and things that they work through openly. Hayley's point around being open about it and having that conversation with your lead is really important. But it's also something that we need to incorporate into the working style day to day. So that includes the way that you participate in maybe our all-in tech team all-in on a Tuesday morning, or it might be the way that you attend stand-ups on your projects. It might be the way that you communicate in your Jira tickets in terms of the way in which things need to be communicated. It might be the hours that you're working as well, and your sleep cycles that might need some special care and attention, and all of these things are raised through the appropriate channels at Portable, and we make sure that we action them, and we make sure that we take those things into account when we're getting our day-to-day work done, because at the end of the day, if we help others be successful, we all be successful in what we're trying to achieve. So it's a win-win.
It is a win-win. I have another question here. Just thinking who will be the best person. Might again go to you, Chris, for this one. Does Portable allow an employee to explore and grow into different roles within the company? For example, from a dev to UX role.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not something that happens often, but we also have scenarios, or more recently, just zooming out a little bit, Portable has gone on a bit of a journey over the last 18 months where the technology discipline was formerly the development team, turning into technology, and now to the point where we have sub-disciplines inside the technology teams where, there's a web application team or sub-discipline, there's a support sub-discipline, and these different groupings allow people to focus on certain aspects of their career or their career development in a way that means that as a business, we can have stability within the teams over an extended period of time. So say, for example, you want to be in the web application team for, say, 12 months, and then all of a sudden you've done so much design or front-end development as a part of that, and you really want to start exploring what the design aspects of that would be. That's absolutely a possibility. And moving from, say, a senior developer to a junior experienced designer is something that Portable would openly explore, because it's about being able to utilize, say, that 3 years or 2 years or however long you've been working at Portable, and the ways of working with the team and building on who you are as a person, and then bringing that into a new area where you want to learn and grow. So that's really important. And I think probably something that's available in most other settings, especially where there's a large degree of variability on projects and opportunities. So yeah, certainly not something that we put a hard limit on at Portable.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Our next question is, how does Supportable support first jobbers in the current working climate of working remotely? Guessing this means first time people working. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how I'm working remotely for Portable in Canberra, and I'll be continuing to work remotely. So sorry, I have been working remotely for quite a long time, and Portable was my first tech job. And Portable is very supportive in terms of lots of our meetings are available online, and if anyone is remote, that those meetings are made sure that they're online. As well as there's like lots of social events to help people feel connected. We also have a buddy system. So even though I've been at Portable for a couple of years now, Ellie has just started and I was Ellie's buddy. So we've caught up through the Zooms. That was a lot of fun. And I think Lincoln also started at Portable being remote, as well as Ellie and Jeanette, I think, since we've been working remotely this whole time. So I'd love to know about what your thoughts are on joining Portable and working full-time and how you felt supported.
Thanks, Deb. When I started at Portable, I was half in the office, half at home. They supplied me with a very nice laptop, which made things very easy. They had a no obligation office roster, which was really good. It didn't press you to be in the office X amount of days, so you can do what suits you, especially during the pandemic times and the changing rules. We also work across different time zones, so we have meetings to accommodate for different people. So sometimes you have early meetings or late meetings, so that's very nice. That's all I have written down.
Thanks, Lincoln. How about you, Ellie? How did you find starting at Portable and just being remote this whole time?
Yeah, no, it's been really good. I think one of the really good things with being remote was the fact that we were able to get at least one day in the office. Given obviously the current COVID conditions, getting a work permit to come in for at least one day to see the space and to meet some people in person was really wonderful. But working remote, like Lincoln said, we got a lovely laptop. And like you said, Deb, there's the social events, which are just so much fun. And also, yeah, the buddy system is really great. Having those kind of more fun activities to lighten the load and make things a bit more enjoyable is, yeah, really awesome. Yeah.
Thanks very much. So we're coming to the end of our time for the event. So even though we haven't been able to answer every question, we apologize, and we hope that we've covered off lots of information for you. And if you have burning questions still, feel free to reach out to any of us on LinkedIn, or you can contact us through our website. That's going to be a wrap for today. Thank you all to all of our fantastic presenters. A recording of this webinar will be available on the event post on our website soon. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope that all of you learned something new and that you're feeling more equipped to tackle your next job application and interviews.